Hello and welcome to The Real Talk. My name is Sierra and today we have Benton and his partner Robyn. Benton is a trans man from Vernon, BC, and Robyn and him have been in a relationship for just over a year. Robyn is also a part of the LGBTQIA+ community. She identifies as queer. Let's get into it. Welcome Robyn and Benton.
Hi.
Hi. So excited to have you two here today. So we're going to be going through Benton's transition and then moving on to meeting each other, being in a queer relationship, and all of that kind of fun stuff. So, Benton, can you tell us about your transition journey?
Yeah, it started around puberty, I'd say. Never, I always kind of grew up as the tomboy. Like my friends, I never had the girliest friends either. We were pretty much all just, dudes being guys. So I never felt out of place. But then when puberty kind of started, there's obviously a difference between the guys and the girls. Never felt like one of the girlies, but never felt like one of the guys either. And it was so the information that was available to me wasn't the best. Like through social media, it was very one-sided, not as in depth or as informative as it is nowadays. Because nowadays there's a lot more information, there's a lot more understanding about that. But back then it was kind of not the best. So trying to navigate that, it's like, okay, do I want to be like this awful person that I'm reading about online, or do I want to just kind of keep trying to live my life the way it is? And it worked for a little bit up until I graduated. So in school, I didn't even think about it. I didn't really care. I just kind of flew under the radar, which helped with me because I had a very like punk rock style. I wore black. I had eyeliner and Converse, very like androgynous, very middle of the road. So nobody cared. People thought I was lesbian, but I wasn't. But after high school is kind of when I was left with my own thoughts and trying to figure out who I am outside of just who I knew I was growing up in school. So, yeah, it was just watching a lot of videos about other trans people and seeing if it resonated with me, like not even just trans guys, like trans women or non-binary folk or androgyny, seeing what gender fit with me specifically.
So, what were some of the key milestones or turning points for you when you started wanting to actually transition?
Well, I'd say the first milestone was before I even wanted to transition. I wanted to cut my hair so bad. I'd always had long hair, and my mom was so protective of it. She was very like, your hair is long and beautiful, and I'm sure it was. But it was like, it doesn't feel right. And the first time I got to chop it, at least just to my chin, I was like, this is amazing. This is fantastic. I don't know why, but it's great. This is also back in the day of early YouTube, so there was a lot of inspiration with my haircut through that. Ordering a 3-pack of compression vests that were meant for, I looked it up because I don't know how to say it, gynecomastia surgery, which is usually for cisgender men who grow the titties and then have to get them cut off.
The more you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a full panel that was flattening it. So instead of me having a flat chest, I kind of just looked like a sausage roll because I was chunky. So, trying to put in my giant hips and my chest into like this casing, I was like a sausage roll.
Right. So
But it was better than nothing.
yeah, it did what you wanted, but
Yeah.
it maybe wasn't as aesthetically pleasing.
No. It was definitely uncomfortable, but I traded that for the uncomfortability of not wearing it.
Right. And was there like some type of like euphoria from wearing this?
Absolutely. Like the second that I put in the order, I started crying. I was like, this is finally happening. And the first time I put it on, I struggled. It took like 15 minutes to put it on. And then I just stood in the mirror. I looked and I was like, I started crying. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
It was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something that you did instead of all of a sudden just coming out and saying, I am Benton, I am trans, is that you almost did like a soft launch of coming out. Can you explain what you did and how you did that?
Yeah, so I think it first started with coming out to my best friend. My best friend's been with me for, over a decade. So we had a very good understanding. We knew like how we grew up. We knew each other. So talking to him about it first and being like, hey, do you want to try and use this name with me or these pronouns? Like, I think at that time I was trying to use they, them too, because I still didn't feel comfortable enough to fully go to he, because I'd been so used to she and just hearing it all the time. But that worked out. And I remember even writing a list of different names that I wanted, and like maybe names that I thought of when I was younger or just heard around. But so the name Benton came from someone that was following on social media, and I heard that and I was like, I like that name. I just like the way it sounds. All the other names didn't matter. I was working an overnight retail job where I worked with maybe 15 people, and one of them was my mom. So my mom knew I was trans. My my direct manager knew I was trans, and maybe like one other person. But I still was going by my legal name. People still, even though I had short hair, I was wearing a binder, I didn't have makeup, I thought I was passing. I probably looked like a 12-year-old boy. And my manager was such a sweetheart, but she always come around and be like, hi ladies, how's it going? Hi girls, we're doing great. And I'd always just not answer because I'm like, I'm not a part of that. You're talking to me, but I'm not a part of that. Um, so it was mostly only just with family and my friend that I did the soft launch.
So at what point did you decide to go the next step with your transition?
It was after talking to one of my friends from high school. He was also starting a transition. So he started maybe 6 or 9 months before I did. And we both came from Vernon. So he was telling me about a clinic that's in Vernon that does informed consent and like helps with gender issues. And it was the first clinic I'd known that was open to different genders and sexualities. It was a very comfortable place versus just a regular doctor's office. So he gave me the name of who he was talking to, and I tried to make an appointment, and I made an appointment with my family doctor, just trying to get the ball rolling. Especially because I knew that informed consent was a thing, because informed consent makes it so much easier than trying to go to a psychiatrist and have them assess you and tell you that, yes, you are trans. I think you do need medication. Because that can be hard for a lot of people, and it's a lot of hoops that you have to go through, and it can take years because some professionals think they know people better than they know themselves. But that's the good part about informed consent, because if I know what's best for me, so I can be like, hey, no, I need these things for me.
What was your experience with this office and medical professionals there?
It was easier than I thought it would be, even though it was already kind of the easier route. I went in for my first appointment, kind of told them what I was hoping to get, if I needed help with getting medication or I wanted to go through these steps. And then they pointed me to my family doctor, who could also be like, yeah, I've been looking at this guy for a while. I think this could be the right path. This isn't just someone who's deciding to do this for the fun of it. So I think that was the biggest part, was making sure that I'm not just doing this just for the funsies. So after that, I had to do some blood tests, and then I had to go back to the clinic, and they made sure that, like, all of these are the side effects that could happen. Yes, I've read about them forever. These are things that could happen. These are things that you have to think about in the future. But after that, I was like, yeah, I think this is the step I want to do. And from going into the clinic the first time to having my first hormone shot, I think it was only like 8 weeks. It wasn't a long time. I had maybe 2 doctor's appointments. I had blood work, and then they're like, yep, you can go pick up your prescription, come back here, and then we'll shoot it in you. And I'm like, oh, that's happening today then. I got the call, and I was like, cool, I'm going to pick up my medication, and in 2 hours, I'm going to have testosterone in my body. And it was the most exciting day. I can still remember it. It was so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How long did it take to start seeing changes from being on testosterone?
Some changes were pretty automatic. Like, I noticed my smell, just normal, just the way that you smell, like when you sweat or you're just hanging out, it smelled different. I was like, that's weird. That was the first thing I noticed. And then I'd say around 3 or 4 months is kind of when more of the changes became more noticeable, because I did update videos every month. And I took lots of pictures, and I did the voice recordings, and there was an app that would track your the pitch of your voice, and I was so obsessed with seeing the little changes, but then at the same time they didn't seem like they were coming fast enough. But then around the 4 to 6 month mark is when my facial hair started to get thicker, or like my voice like had an actual like drop, not just a little bit, or you just kind of sound like you're sick.
At what point did you feel comfortable going in public as Benton?
I'd say around the 6 to 8 month mark when I started passing a bit more. It's kind of a blur because, you go out and people interact with you, and if, they call me a girl, I would brush it off. I wouldn't pay any mind. But then all of a sudden, people started calling me sir more, started saying he, and then it just kind of started more like that. I'm like, oh, things are actually like changing now. It's not just me thinking these changes, not me looking at pictures of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, being like, look, I have another hair on my face. It's people actually being like, oh, you sound more than sick, or you look like your face is more square, or like you smell weird,
All these things that you wanted to happen and people are noticing.
Exactly. But then I also kind of got like, I don't know how to word it, like blind nose, because I'm living with it day to day. I didn't notice those little things until I saw somebody after like a month or two, and they're like, oh, your voice dropped, or wow, you look different.
Yeah, but you were happy about it.
I was happy. Yeah, I was so happy. I think the only thing I wasn't happy about was I gained like 40 pounds. So that was the heaviest I'd ever been. I was like, that's not fun.
Yeah.
But taking hormones also kind of helped with that, because I went from being an apple shape to kind of just like a sausage roll.
How did you cope during this time of your initial transition?
So at that time I was 19, just turning 20, and I was not medicated. So I wasn't the most mentally stable. One of the biggest things was I journaled. I journaled at least every other day just to write down my thoughts, kind of keep track of what things were happening. But also, I don't have the best memory, so if I journaled, I could read back on it and be like, oh, okay, things did happen, instead of just going by in a blur. At that time, I didn't have a job as well, so I kind of was dabbling into drinking a little bit because, it wasn't the best, but, things happen. Things happen, especially when your brain is in turmoil, and sometimes you just gotta push through it. But it was only for a little bit. Other things I did was I would immerse myself in adventure games. I would just spend like 12 or 13 hours playing and just kind of escape the boring reality I had, because not a lot was going on. Especially like the time of the year, it's colder. You can't go outside and hang out with your friends in the sun. You can't go to the beach or anything. You're kind of just stuck inside with your own resources, which for me was adventure games or going to the library and getting books and just reading them in one sitting.
My gosh.
Yeah, I know. I'm not the biggest reader, but when I have nothing to do, I will read so many books.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's interesting. Did you almost do it as like the adventure games and the reading? I guess it almost was an escape.
Yeah, it was definitely more escapism for me, like being able to just put my life into someone else's and then just kind of live that out, instead of having to play the waiting game for when are my hormones going to happen, or waiting for when I'm going to get a job, or just having to deal with the stuff in my personal life, which isn't the healthiest, but it did get me through that. So in a way, I think it was okay, even if it wasn't the best coping mechanism. But it could have been worse. There are worse out there.
So we've talked about the hormones. We've talked about finding a really great doctor's office in Vernon that would help you with all of these really awesome gender-affirming care procedures. But you wanted to take it a step further with your transition. So what was the next step for you?
The next step for me was getting top surgery, not having to wear binders every single day and have to deal with the aches and pains that came with that. So, and just being able to go to the beach without a shirt on. The top surgery was definitely the one for me. But through my research online, you could go to a specialist and pay out of pocket maybe $7,000, and I could have had it within a year. But I did not grow up with money, and I wasn't able to just pull out $7,000. So thankfully in Canada, they have a medical system that will help pay for those things and completely cover the cost of surgery and hospital stays and pretty much everything you need. But you have to be put on a wait list, and it's a very long wait list. But it was worth it not having to pay the money.
So what was the wait like? Because you just got the surgery almost a year ago. It's been, 11 months, something like that?
10 months. It'll be a year in October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy, hey?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Like, the time waiting before top surgery seemed like forever, but now it's like, wow, time flies. It's already been a year.
The wait took longer than it initially should have because we had a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, love COVID.
Yeah. And did it take a while to get on the list initially as well?
It did. So it was through the website Transcare BC. They had, I don't remember if I phoned them or I sent an email, but I just got in touch with them. They're the community that helps trans people in BC. So that could be quite a lot of people, but I got in contact with them and then they're like, okay, we'll see what the steps are to get this started. They asked me what kind of surgery I needed, if I had any preferences of surgeons, if I had any preference of where to go, because at that time, most of the main surgeons were in Vancouver. There was one surgeon in Kelowna, I think, and then one more in Kamloops. It was just a waiting game. I would get my first phone call and they'd be like, okay, you're on a wait list to be on the wait list for surgery eventually. I'd be like, okay, cool. Talk to you later. And then maybe 6 months later, I get another phone call from the same phone number. And then they'd be like, hey, good news. Now you're on the actual wait list. I'd be like, okay, cool. Any time frame? They're like, not really. So it'd be me going online, seeing what the wait times for any surgery at hospitals were and trying to make my own guess. Like, okay, this surgery takes 10 months. This one takes 2 years, kind of seeing where I would be. Yeah, and all the while my life was just happening. I'm moving cities. I'm doing different jobs. I'm trying to just navigate as a young adult while also just waiting for this phone call. And then eventually, I remember I was on my break at work one day, and then I got the phone call, and they're like, hey, we're actually going to, figure out what surgeon you need. We're going to put you on the list with that surgeon, and, things will keep going. I'm like, this is great. And then COVID hit. And then everything kind of halted because, the hospitals were just filled with so many people having to deal with COVID that a lot of the surgeries for even people that needed, heart surgeries or just surgeries that were life-saving all got pushed back. So because mine was more of not really a cosmetic surgery, but some people could see it as that, it did take a little bit longer. I probably could have had surgery in 2019.
Wow. Yeah. I think the word we're looking for is elective surgery.
Elective surgery.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think.
Maybe. I don't know. I elected to please have them removed.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense for that word. Yeah.
Could you talk about the pain and struggles of binding? Because I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah. Again, it depends on just how physical you are as a person and how healthy you are and what kind of binders you wear, because I wore a couple different ones. I had the first compression binder that compressed all around me, so it kind of just squished everything. It hurt my stomach, things would be squished in. But after that, I started wearing a half tank top compression binder where it was a non-stretchy panel in the front, and then it was stretchy in the back, so that would push more in the front. So a lot of the health issues were if I wore the binder for maybe more than 6 hours, it would be hard to breathe, or it'd feel like I just ran a marathon and then your sides hurt and you're like, oh, I need to lay down. This hurts. It feels like something's going to pop. Luckily, I didn't have anything break or anything go physically wrong, but there are a lot of things that can go wrong. If you don't use a proper binder, some people use ace bandages, which are very dangerous because they do compress on themselves. Those are not meant for long-term wear. And people like to think that you can do that, but the more you move around in the day, the more it compresses, and that's going to mess up your ribs. So a lot of people, their ribs get indented, or their ribs can snap if they're not careful, or the ribs will curve in and puncture their lungs. When I was looking into the dangers of this, I saw a lot of people, they had really messed up ribs, they would concave. And unfortunately, my ribs also kind of do that now, but it's not as bad as I've seen other people because I was very safe with it. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I probably could have avoided some of that because I did wear my binder for 12 hours a day. I'd go and work for 8 hours at a job, but I'd also wear it a couple hours before and a couple hours after, and I'd wear it every single day. And you're supposed to take breaks to avoid that, but I did not. So besides the ribs too, wearing that constantly, it's like wearing a brace. So your core muscles don't really know how to be core muscles. You can't stand up straight. It hurts to stand for a while because your middle's like, I don't know what to do. I'm just jelly. We've had this brace around us for a while holding us together, so that's something that's also affected me. And then at the end of the day, when I take off my binder, I'm like, I need to lay down because my body hurts and because everything's just being let go now after being squished in all day.
Different, but I mean, same kind of feeling when you have a tight pair of socks on and you take them off and you're like, freedom.
You see all the lines in your foot and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can stretch, I can let go. Exactly. Or like taking off a tight pair of shoes at the end of the day.
Yeah, but it's happening to like 50% of your body.
Like the tightest, most uncomfortable sports bra on the planet,
Yeah.
basically.
That you just can't wait to rip off when you get home. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So what happens to breasts when you bind?
The elasticity is not as good. So that's another thing you need to keep in mind if you're binding for a long time, like years before you have top surgery, because that can also affect top surgery results. Because when you get top surgery, the elasticity in your skin is what helps it bounce back to shape, is what helps kind of keep things looking how they should. But if you constantly bind, you're breaking down the elasticity and the cartilage in your skin. So like the skin wears thin. There's certain parts of the skin that feel like tissue paper compared to like regular skin, how it should feel. So, yeah, it was mostly just skin elasticity. They'd be less voluptuous. I never had the best chest. I didn't have perky itty bitties, but it... how do I say this without being weird? It was like flat pancakes after a little while, because...
That's a good description of
Yeah.
it for the visual, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean, if people really wanted to look it up, I'm sure somebody out there has posted pictures of something like that. But
Yeah, but also hormones get in hand with that because your fat redistributes with hormones. So, things move around, things change.
Yeah.
So not everyone's going to look the same. If you take hormones or if you don't, if you bind for a long time or don't, or depending on what, everybody's different. So it's all going to be different.
but that was your experience with
That
it.
was my experience, yeah.
So it took you a while to figure out your sexual identity as Benton. Can you tell us a little bit about the exploration aspect of this?
It didn't really start until I felt comfortable just presenting as a guy. Just very much passing. People didn't have a second glance. Also, around 6 months when I was on hormones, I feel like it was the 6-month mark where a lot of things started changing. There's the conception that your sexuality changes when you transition, because that does happen sometimes. People will be attracted to one gender, they go through hormones, and then they're attracted to a different one. They're like, was I always this way? And that kind of happened with me a little bit. I found I was a lot more attracted to girls. I was like, I can't help it how pretty they are. I'd always thought girls were pretty, but I was like, I'll pursue guys because, they're fun and quirky and dorky, and I like that. But I was like, maybe that's who I want to be. So once I figured out I started liking girls, I was like, oh, okay, how is this going to work with me being trans? Because, of course, a trans guy, or I'll say a guy and a girl, that's a very hetero-looking relationship. But if I'm trans, I obviously don't have the part that would make that hetero, in a sense. So that was a struggle, trying to find people who saw me as that. But then on the other side, if I did want to date a guy, I don't want to be... I felt uncomfortable being in a gay relationship because I'm like, that's not me. I'm not like... I don't have the attraction of men downstairs. Men can be attractive. They're handsome. Love Chris Evans, but I couldn't feel like I could be with them. Especially in high school, I kind of took on the label of asexuality because I didn't know who I was as a person. I didn't know who would even want to be with me, just the way I am or the way that I was going to be. So I was like, instead of trying to figure all that out, I'll just push it to the side and I'll say I'm not attracted to anyone. I knew that wasn't the case. I think I was just really good at repressing it. And then, around the 6-month mark, I was like, I don't think I am asexual because I really do like girls. So that's when I started going into dating apps just to be like, I would like to have a partner, but my only options right now are my coworkers, and not a lot of coworkers I found great. So I was like, oh, we'll try dating apps. We'll see what the hubbub is about. I tried a lot of different ones. I'm not going to name names, but there was a handful of them that I tried, but it always seemed to not bring in who I seemed I was looking for. I don't know how else to explain it. You know, like there was lots of cute guys. I went on a date with a guy once, and it just didn't feel right because it was very like, okay, I don't feel like this is how I need to be. But then I never went on a date with a girl either. But I'm like, nobody wanted to date me or swipe on me because they're like, oh, you look flamboyant, you know, or oh, you know, in dating profiles, you kind of have to put that you're trans because if people see you, you know, you look masculine, they're going to assume something about downstairs. And that's kind of the first thing people think of when getting into a relationship. You know, not every relationship is based on physical intimacy, but it is a big part of a lot of relationships, especially the relationships I was looking for. So trying to figure out who would be okay with being physical with me while me being okay to be physical with them and not, you know, withhold anything or not feel afraid or not, you know, feel like I'm going to be judged. So just putting out that, hey, I'm trans. If you don't like that, move on. You know, that definitely helped. But then I feel like most of the people that I got, you know, in my dating circle ended up also being trans folk or like gender diverse people. So, which is fine, but I feel like, you know, dating apps are more meant for cisgender people in a way because, you know, you see who you like, you can click. But with trans people, you have to say like, this is what I have in my pants. These are the pronouns I like, and these are the people that I'm attracted to. And it can get very confusing in that way. So I gave up on that for a while because I'm like, I can't handle this. This is so much to think about. I just want someone to like hold hands with and cuddle and kiss maybe. Like this is too much to think about.
Could you tell us how you balance your identity with your current relationships with friends, family, I mean, with this lovely lady here, all of that kind of stuff?
It's definitely changed because I've never had guy friends. Maybe when I was very young I did, but my friends have always been girls. And even if we didn't do girl things, it was just like, oh, girls' night, but we're, I don't know, watching a movie and playing video games and eating snacks. You know, it wasn't a girl thing. So when I started going through my transition, you know, some of my friends, I'm sure with the best intentions, they did not include me in girls' night. They're like, you're a boy now, so you're not going to be part of girls' night. We're going to be doing classic girly things. And I'm like, but just because I'm a guy doesn't mean that I don't enjoy that. You know, like girl sleepovers are very fun. You know, you get to gossip, you get to eat snacks and watch movies and stay up until that magical hour of 3 a.m. and nothing is real. You know, that's what I like about hanging out. But so, you know, I'm glad that they were respecting my gender, but then at the same time, they're outcasting me. Like they didn't have to say it's girls' night. You know, they could have just not have done that. So
It didn't have to be gendered.
it didn't have to be gendered because especially nowadays, like I don't think anything should be gendered. You know, anybody can enjoy anything. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you do just want to be one of the girlies. Like even if you're not a girl, you want to be one of the girlies.
So what kind of advice would you give to others in a similar situation to this?
I would say if they really are your friends or your friend group or whoever you're hanging out with, you should be completely honest with them. You know, if you're afraid of saying, hey, I do want to join in for retaliation, I feel like they're not really your friends. But if you tell them, they should be understanding. Be like, oh, we didn't realize that. And then maybe they'll reconsider or they'll change their mind and, you know, make it not so gendered. You know, it's mostly just communication, just communicating how you feel and kind of like, hey, I felt left out during this, or, oh, just because I'm using these pronouns and using this name now does not mean that I don't enjoy these certain activities. You know, like just because I'm a guy doesn't mean I'm all of a sudden into sports and cars and mechanics and, you know, lumber. You know, like I still have my own interests that are inherently feminine, I guess, but not saying that there's girls out there that like, you know, masculine things. You know, it's everyone likes their own stuff and you can't just assume what people's interests are because of their gender or what gender they changed.
So now it's time to get into the two of you and your relationship. So let's start from the beginning. How did you two meet?
Work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were coworkers. We've known each other since 2018.
End of 2018.
So basically an eternity.
Yeah, forever.
Forever.
Absolutely forever.
Yeah. And you were in a relationship with someone else.
I was dating somebody when we met, so we were pretty quick best friends, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you confided in each other, and the relationship got stronger just as friends. Yeah.
Like, we worked together. We would do goofy stuff at work together. We would go to, like, Denny's at, like, 11 p.m. after work.
Yeah, regular coworker things.
Mm-hmm.
Just girly things.
Yeah. And you are also a part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Sure am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You identify as queer, right?
Sure do.
Awesome. Okay, so when you found this out, did it make you feel like more comfortable with Robyn as a friend?
Yeah, I think so. I think just knowing anybody's queer, it just adds a little friendship point on there.
Some friendship zest?
Some friendship zest. Yeah, it's like, you're a little bit fruity. I like you a little bit more.
Before we started recording today, you had a crush on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little one.
Maybe just a little one.
That's funny. It's so cute. And when Robyn and her past partner split up, obviously, like, you were there for her during that time and everything. And at what point did you see Robyn as like an actual romantic partner?
To be honest, before they broke up.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's honesty speaking. But after that, like, was it something you guys like spoke about before actually dating, or like?
No.
Oh, how did this all go down?
I remember so distinctly the moment I realized he was flirting with me. I was sitting in the classroom I worked in, I think on like my break or something, and he had sent me like a kind of flirty message. And I remember reading it and then looking at it for far too long as I was like that white woman meme with all the math symbols, putting it together in my brain. And then I closed that message, and then I texted one of our mutual friends who's one of my best friends, and I was like, I think he's flirting with me. And then she was like, you have to respond to him. He knows you've read it, dummy. And I was like, I sent him, I was like, are you flirting with me? And he was like, maybe. I was like, I like it.
And that was history.
That was it. I don't even really think we ever went on a first official date.
I was just trying to shoot my shot. I moved out of town. I moved to a different town when this happened. And then they broke up, and I was like, of course I had to move away. But like, can I slide into her DMs? Like, gotta shoot my shot.
And it worked out.
It sure worked.
Yeah. So another thing about you is that you are a Christian. You are religious.
Yes.
And I'm sure a lot of people watching this right now or listening are like, what the heck? What do you mean you are religious? You are queer. You are with a trans man. How does this work?
Very well. Honestly, it all intersects really comfortably.
Yeah. So you are a part of a church that is very progressive.
Yes, very, very progressive.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
So I'm part of a really progressive church here in Canada. Like, it's strictly for a Canadian church. It's been around, this coming year will be 100 years of the church I'm part of. So in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of a baby. But yeah, it's very progressive. Of the 5 ministers my church has had since I've been born and baptized there, 2 of them have been gay. One of our current one, he's on sabbatical right now, but he has a queer child and has spoken out very publicly as pro-soji.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what is soji for people that don't?
Soji is sexual orientation and gender identity. It is a training program for educators and education assistants in school districts to help facilitate and help students who identify differently than the norm feel comfortable.
So how did religion come up when you two were getting to know each other?
So it came up in a very workplace kind of way. I was booking Easter Sunday off so that I could go to church with my parents. and I sort of slid him the time off request, and he was like, "Oh, you go to church?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I walked away, like that was the conversation.
And nothing else. Obviously, it was like a workplace relationship at that point.
Yeah. Like we were friends at that point. So it was like, that's all you need to know.
And then as you two grew closer and started dating, how did this come up in your dating life? Because I'm sure Benton, it was tough, I'm sure, in ways.
Yes and no. Like, there was definitely religion in my upbringing, but it was never forced upon. It was very much, my mom's very much your journey with God is your own journey, very spiritual, not going into a church to pray to this guy. The church isn't where God is. So it was always there, but it was never at the forefront of my mind. I've never really been the most religious person. But I also don't disregard other people's religion. I'm not going to say that they're wrong or that they're silly or that they, should just open their eyeballs, because everybody has their own beliefs. And just because I don't believe certain ways that other people do doesn't mean that they're wrong. If they find comfort in that, or that's something they do believe in, then that's okay.
So what was your experience like when you were younger going to church?
I've gone to an actual church a few times with my mom and my grandparents, just for morning service. But mostly my religious upbringing was going to... I grew up in the States, so I don't know if things are the same here or they have the same programs, but there's Vacation Bible School. So during the summer, you'd do little... I don't even remember. All I remember is doing like the arts and crafts and getting the little toys. Like a lot of my religious upbringing, like I was also part of Pathfinders, and I did, like flag marches and badges and learning how to do all that stuff. But the religion part was never the main focus in my brain. I'm sure the other people that did go there, that's what they're there. They're there for the love of God. But I was there mostly to just hang out with my friends and learn some stuff and maybe feel some sort of peace. But I never felt connected in that way. It was. I don't have a negative or a positive way about it. I think the only time it turns negative is someone tries to tell me that my belief is wrong or my lack of belief is wrong, or other people's beliefs are wrong compared to what they are. It's like you're being aggressive for no reason. That's what I don't like.
Mm-hmm. I guess the other part of it too is that, biblically, there's all of this hatred in the Bible against LGBTQ people and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that was hard in ways as well.
Yeah, that, and then mixed in with growing up in a small town, like my graduation class had 23 people.
Oh.
The high school, grades 9 through 12, maybe 150 kids. Like, it was not a big town. It's comparable to Barrier, I think.
Where's that?
I don't know.
Just north of Kamloops.
Okay.
I work with someone that's like, Barrier's such a small town, population like 1,500. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of where I grew up too.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, you have a gas station, a bar, and a post office.
Fair. Yep, that makes sense. And so when you and Robyn got together and, Robyn was talking about her experiences with this really amazing progressive church, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel hopeful. Like it didn't bring up the religious flame in me, but it made me feel like, you know what, maybe I can go to a church service again. Because in my adolescent and adult life, I've only been to a church once since being a kid, and it was like a Ukrainian Orthodox church for Easter, but I was going with my friends. It was more me going with my friends and doing this thing for them versus me actually wanting to go to church at 7 a.m. Mm-hmm. But hearing Robyn's experience with her church and her priest and just her journey with her own church, it makes me feel like, you know what, if I do want to delve back into that, I think that would be a good place to go. Or if you feel like you want to go to your church or you want to have service, then I'm not gonna stop you, because I'm like, no, this is a great place and I'll go for you, but maybe I'll also learn something, because people have different views and things have changed in the last 20 years.
A lot.
A lot has changed, even the last 10 years.
Even the last 5.
Mm-hmm.
So much has changed, and yeah, you never know what you're gonna learn or take from it, right? Mm-hmm.
It makes me hopeful. Like at this point in my life, I don't think if I do regularly go to church, I will become religious or spiritual, but you never know. You can't dismiss that.
So how did your friends and family react when you got into this relationship? Because I guess it would have been your first queer relationship and your first big relationship.
Yeah.
So how did this all work out?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. I was nervous to. I'll start with my mom. I was nervous to tell my mom because like we never talked about who I was attracted to. Like she'd asked a couple times. I'd maybe tried to talk about it when I was younger, but that was just nothing I ever wanted to talk about. I fully had in my mind I'm gonna be alone forever. I'm not gonna get married. I'm not gonna like be with a partner. And I was okay with that. Or like I'd live with my best friend, you know. But part of me was like I want a relationship. But my mom, she loved it, and especially when she met Robyn. And one of the things, because I did have a very brief relationship before this. It was only 4 months, and half of it wasn't even like a relationship. But I'd never told my mom about it. I never brought it up. So when I started talking about Robyn with my mom, she's like, I know it's serious because like you're talking about her, and like because like you brought her here to like meet me. She's like, that's big, and I was like, it is, but like. I don't know. With my mom, I never had that kind of relationship where it felt like I could just talk about it, like she's my best friend. I'm like, this so feels weird. But no, all my friends were happy about it. I don't think anyone ever questioned it. If anything, it was, I work at a coffee shop where sometimes my attitude and the way I present myself, people think that I'm attracted to guys. So when, especially my coworkers, I'll bring up my girlfriend. I'll say, "Oh, my girlfriend." They kind of give me a look. They're like, "You're not gay?" I'm like, "No, but I am trans, if that makes sense." And they're like, "Oh, okay, that clicks now." So if anything, it was more like that, trying to, be excited for people, but then also kind of out myself at the same time. Like, no, I'm not gay, but I am trans. So, but like, here's my girlfriend. But everybody's, at least from my stance, has been very nice about it.
Oh, that's awesome. And how about for you, Robyn?
I mean, from the get-go, my parents knew who you were because we worked together. My mom and I had driven you home a couple of times when you didn't have your car. So when that started, they were like, oh, okay, he's a nice boy. And then, my grandparents met you pretty early on because you came to my family birthday party. And I was really lucky that you got to meet my grandpa before he passed away. And they've all been really great with it. They were all super supportive during your surgery. Like, my mom would text me throughout your recovery. My grandma called a couple times. I had to explain to my grandma what transgender was because she's in her 70s. She has no idea. We were sitting in the backyard. It was probably this time last year, like right after we got the phone call for it. And I was like, oh yeah, I have to take like a week off in October because Benton's having surgery. And my grandma was like, what kind of, is he okay? Like, what's going on? I was like, Grandma, do you know what transgender means? And she was like, kind of. And I was like, okay, well, Benton's that. And we're having top surgery. And then she was like, what's top surgery? And I was like, when women get their biddies taken away? And she was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, that, basically. And she was like, oh, okay. And my friends have been cool with it. Like, another queer person into our friend group, they weren't concerned about that. They were more concerned about, like, how he treats me, how he treats other people, if my parents like him, like that kind, like normal relationship stuff.
So, Robyn, you've actually been exploring your own sexuality a little bit further. Could you tell us more about this exploration and how it fits into your identity as a queer Christian?
Yeah, so when I was, with a cis heterosexual man, I was very feminine, very fit into the traditional female roles in a relationship. I would cook, I would clean, I would bake, that kind of stuff. But now with somebody who also has a feminine side to them, I am exploring my masculine side a little bit more. I mean, I still feel very comfortable and confident in presenting with my femininity, and I love being feminine. I love makeup. I love doing my hair. Pink is my favorite color.
Couldn't tell.
But I love camping and building things and getting dirty.
And doing, again, kind of that gender role of man things.
Yeah, I mean, even in my like childhood, like growing up, my mom was the one who built furniture and fixed things. So having a strong female role model doing typically man things has never been unusual to me.
Yeah. And how was that kind of stuff in your household, Benton, like growing up?
Pretty much the same. Growing up, my parents divorced when I was 8, so my mom kind of had the dad and the mom role. So she would teach me the mom things, you know, cooking, sewing, whatever. But then on the dad side, she'd teach me how to mow the lawn or how to set up a fishing hook on a fishing pole. You know, she very much did both sides, and it wasn't weird. And like how I said earlier, you know, being a masculine girl isn't as weird, I guess, in society as a feminine guy. You know, like girls, like I would play around and tie up ties, or I'd wear snapbacks, or I'd, you know, dress like the punk pop guys that I was listening to, you know, very much the emo phase. So she was very open about it. She never really enforced any of the gender roles like that, which helped me feel comfortable with the things that I enjoy too.
Okay, one last question before we close it out. What does the future look like for you two?
I want us to get married.
I would love to be his wife one day and to have his kids.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What would having children look like for you two?
That's something we're still trying to figure out, because there are sciences out there that can combine 2 eggs, like for lesbian couples that want to produce a child, with their own DNA. There's options for that, but it might not be viable for me because I've been on hormones for a while, and that was something I didn't think about prior. Of course not. But there's always things like adoption or finding a donor that looks like me, you know, so at least kind of looks like both of us, even if it doesn't have both of our DNA. But there's so many options out there. Yeah. And it's fun for me because before this relationship, I never wanted to have a family. I never wanted to have kids. I never thought I would be married or anything like that. Like, I was very much okay just being by myself. But now it's like, I don't want to cry. It's nice.
I really can't picture my future without him. I've always wanted to be a wife. I've always wanted to be a mom, because I grew up in, you know, a 2-parent household, a very loving parent household. And I want that. I've always wanted that. I've seen my grandparents who were married for like 54 years. My parents are just over 30 years together. Like, I want my kids to have what I had.
Very last question here. If our listeners could take away one thing from today's interview, what should it be?
I would say, it sounds so cliche, but just keep trying. Like, at least in, you know, terms of gender and everybody's personal journey, just keep trying. Don't give up. Like, even if things take a while or things don't go as fast as you hope, things will work out in the end. You just got to keep pushing through.
Mm-hmm. And what on your end would you say?
On the surface level, give the nerdy boy a chance. On a more serious note, don't give up on finding your happy ever after, because it's out there for everybody. It might just take a while to find.
Well, thank you two so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
I had a blast.
Good. I'm so glad. Perfect. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for checking in. And we hope to see you next episode. Bye.